Ich begrüße Sie herzlich zu unserer Veranstaltung mit Dennis Meadows heute Abend. Ich glaube, 550 Leute sind hier und welcome Professor Carruthers, Professor Robin, Professor Meadows, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, dear friends. I'm going to switch wildly between German and English tonight. My name is Christoph Mauch and I'm here this evening representing the Rachel Carson Center for Environment and Society at LMU. The Carson Center is one of three organizers of this lecture series. The other two are BENE, that's the Verein für Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung, e.V., and the Verein für Nachhaltigkeit. Both of them are non-profit institutions for the promotion of sustainability here in Bavaria. This is the first lecture in our winter series. The series is titled Leitbild Nachhaltigkeit, Hoffnung, Handlung, Wandlung. Hoffnung, Handlung, Wandlung. It's a rhyme even in German. It sounds a little bit like an invitation to the Deutsche Evangelische Kirchentag. I think that the translation would be guiding principle, sustainability, hope, action, change. It sounds quite different, more like a more activist Barack Obama campaign message, perhaps. The series is supported by 14 universities and research centers in the Munich region, and it is customary to list them all, 14 universities. This was the reason also this is unique. I think nowhere else in Germany or Europe do you have such a large number of research universities working on behalf of sustainability. This was also the reason why the United Nations awarded this series and named it the official project of the United Nations World Decade of Education for Sustainable Development earlier this year. Now I'm listing the 14 institutions. Ludwig-Maximilians-Universität, I think I can say this quickly, you know them all. Technische Universität München, Hochschule für angewandte Wissenschaften, FH München, Hochschule für Philosophie München, Fachhochschule für angewandtes Management Erding, Fachhochschule für Ökonomie und Management, Hochschule für angewandte Sprachen, Katholische Stiftungsfachhochschule München, Hochschule Weihenstephan Triesdorf, Universität der Bundeswehr München, Zentrum Waldforst Holz e.V. Weihenstephan, Karl von Linde Akademie der TUM und Deutsche Elite Akademie, auch noch die Musikhochschule ist seit diesmal dabei. Ich glaube, das nächste Mal wird es dann auch Musik geben. I would also like to thank Raimund Lammersdorf and the Amerika Haus for hosting this series and for advertising this. Finally, and most importantly, I would like to say that we are very lucky to have Jane Carruthers and Libby Robin with us this evening. Jane Carruthers from South Africa, Libby Robin from Australia. They will introduce Dennis Meadows in a minute. I will introduce the two of them only very briefly. Jane Carruthers is a professor at the University of South Africa. She is the vice president of the Royal Society of South Africa, fellow at Clare Hall, Cambridge. She pioneered the field of environmental history in the continent of Africa. She's published 6 major books. One of them, famous book on Kruger National Park, is quoted often as a model for many other books in the field. She's written on wildlife, she's written on warfare, she's written on resource exploitation, on conservation, on art and artists. She is on 18 editorial boards. I know nobody who is on that many editorial boards on every part of the globe, which actually means, I think it must mean that she knows almost everybody who writes articles or books in the environmental humanities. Professor Carruthers is also the president of ISO. That's the largest organization, the most important and visible world organization for environmental history. The organization that organizes the World Congress, organized the one in 2009 and will organize the one in 2014 in Portugal, 2009 in Copenhagen. Libby Robin is both a museum person and a university professor at the Australian National University and the Australian National Museum. She's also a visiting professor, and it seems to me almost like a permanent visiting professor at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. She has written wonderful books. One of them is called The Flight of the Emu, that some of you know. Another one is called How a Continent Created a Nation, an incredible book about Australia. How a continent created a nation, how an old continent with its hills, with its flora, with its fauna, with its deserts, shaped the national identity of Australia. And I have to say, I don't know anybody who has won prizes for his or her books in so many different fields. Libby Robin's books earned prizes in history, they earned prizes in literature, and they earned prizes in zoology. She now works, and this is very appropriate, on a project that deals with the future. It's called I Hope. I Hope stands for Integrated History, IH, and Future of People on Earth. It's I Hope. It's a global research network, and Libby is working currently on a book called Predicting Nature's Futures, which looks at how resilience, stress, collapse have played out in the past and how they might play out in the future. We're very lucky to have Jane Carruthers and Libby Robin here.
Christoph, thank you very much indeed for that introduction. It's a pleasure and a privilege for me to introduce Dennis Meadows this evening. Together with his gifted late wife Donella, Dennis has played a large part in shaping today's world and our thinking about the big issues that confront us, many of them of our own making. Using operations research and systems theory, we have been able to understand, thanks to Dennis, the complexity that is inherent in society, economics, politics, and of course the broad global environment and its future management. Our understanding of decision-making processes and the vocabulary that goes with it, including now common terms such as feedback loops, scenario planning, control theory, ecological economics, and other modeling expressions, were revolutionized by Dennis Meadows and his collaborators, who synergistically linked operations research and management science to planetary concerns. Dennis's career has been luminary. Born during the Second World War in Kansas, but raised in Rochester, Minnesota, Dennis's life has been deeply etched by the enduring values of his parents. Behave ethically, believe in people, accept responsibility, take action, seek solutions, share your knowledge, and don't accept failure. Meadows' first degree in chemistry was obtained at Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, one of the best liberal arts colleges in the United States. During his youthful and adult years, he traveled and added experience to his book learning. In particular, the environmental history of the places he visited impacted on him, and he came to appreciate that civilizations and cultures rose and fell, that people could take charge of their future, that change was inevitable but could be managed, and that landscapes altered with time and the decisions that humans took about them. Observing parts of the world influenced by human behavior for far longer than the United States, Meadows shifted his perspective from the US to the planet, from decades to millennia. He began to link culture and chronology to science. These experiences altered his career trajectory from chemistry into business science. Dennis moved to MIT, to the Sloan School of Management, where he completed his PhD in the late 1960s under the legendary systems dynamics originator J. Forrester. Not long thereafter, Dennis was appointed director of the Club of Rome project, about which you will hear more from Libby, all the while holding professorial positions at MIT in a number of disciplines. He has also been connected with Dartmouth College and the University of New Hampshire. Dennis Meadows is currently Emeritus Professor of Systems Policy and Social Science Research at the University of New Hampshire. The influence of Forrester and Meadows extended to South Africa in the 1970s, when students at the University of the Witwatersrand, we refer to as WITS, an anti-apartheid and politically radical institution, began reading J. Forrester's World Dynamics and Meadows et al. Limits to Growth. Both these publications helped students and young faculty appreciate the power of modeling outside of physics and engineering. Tony Starfield was one of the young mathematics lecturers, and he applied this kind of modeling to wildlife population studies in the Kruger National Park, work that continues into the present and that eventually initiated an adaptive management paradigm based on resilience theory of South Africa's national parks. But around 1974, on the campus of Wits, there were serious violent clashes between police and students protesting against apartheid. At a Senate meeting, student leaders asked for more support from faculty, and the upshot was that the senior faculty explained that while they did indeed support the political goals and ideals of non-racism, they did not advocate using violence to accomplish them. It was suggested in the meeting that universities as academic institutions should deal with problems intellectually, and the idea took root about a series of lectures that didn't confront the government directly or antagonistically, but employed data and logic to attack apartheid. And thus began the annual Senate lecture series that continues to this day. But the point is that the theme of one of these very first lectures, suggested by Starfield and inspired by Limits to Growth, was called Growth and Its Impact on South Africa. And Alex King, president of the Club of Rome, was the invited keynote speaker. Modelling played a key role in the lectures of this era because it was these techniques that demonstrated that it would not be possible to sustain the growth of the South African economy with the government's racist restrictions on employment, a prediction that was proved correct. This lively series of lectures, of course, had no impact on the government. Violence was, in fact, the only recourse, and it was successful. But these same ideas are now impacting on sustainable development and the environmental limits of an emerging economy in Africa. Dennis Meadows has been awarded many prestigious prizes and 4 honorary doctorates. An extremely energetic and effective man, he has held a number of directorships of university research institutes. He has lectured regularly all over the world and has been a consultant to many governments, industries, and corporations. He co-founded the Balloton Group, a vast network of professional people around systems science and sustainable development. In addition, he has written many books and inspired people for decades as a public thinker. He is no stranger to argument and debate, and enthusiastically engages with critics and commentators. It is unusual, as Meadows is, to be both an individualist and a non-conforming creative thinker, and also a team player. It is also unusual, as Meadows is, to be both a visionary and an immensely practical scholar. Ever innovative, over the years, Meadows has developed a range of virtual or simulation games and methods designed to encourage people to think about his ideas and to test his theories. 2 of the more complex of these are Stratagem, that simulates a country's economy, and Fishbanks, an interactive tool developed in the Stoll School of Management at MIT that explores scenarios around sustainable fisheries. This really is fascinating stuff that, employed appropriately, can make a difference to our world. It is a real honor to have Dennis Meadows here in Munich and to have him share his views so that we too can benefit from his long and productive career in originality. He is an immensely important citizen of our planet. Dennis, over to you.
Hello everyone, it's wonderful to be here at Amerika Haus, welcoming Dennis Meadows, head of the historic project on the predicament of mankind, as it was called then. It's 40 years since the publication of Limits to Growth, during which time it has appeared in 37 languages and some 12 million copies of the book have been sent around the world. 1 million of them in Germany, I hear today. This tonight is a great opportunity to review the influence of the Club of Rome, which was an independent, international think tank, which in 1970 comprised 75 members from 25 countries, who identified 66 continuous problems, all of which could be represented in the single idea of the problem of growth. I want to comment briefly on the life of Limits to Growth over the 40-year period since 1972. It has often been misunderstood as an economic document, where actually it was about ecological limits to growth and the problem of the increasing ecological footprint of our species on the planet. Since 1972, Scenario 1, that is business as usual, has prevailed. Some say the overshoot occurred in the 1980s. That's the moment where we need more than one planet to sustain our lifestyle. I've been working with others on a new history of ideas about global change, an anthology of documents called The Future of Nature, Documents of Global Change, with my Swedish colleague Sverker Sörlin and my UK colleague Paul Ward. The documents actually span 300 years. The earliest, originally in German, now translated into English, is von Karlowitz's definition of sustainability from 1713. And I'm very grateful it's written up there so I don't have to say it. My German is not very good. The most recent of the documents is a paper by Mike Hume, a climate scientist from the UK, which is called Reducing the Future to Climate. In the middle, we have limits to growth. In a time of increasing anxiety about planetary warming, this week's report is suggesting 6 degrees in the next century, very much more than before. But it's important to look at other aspects of global change apart from climate, as the future is a many-faceted thing. Mitigation of warming is still important, but climate change and other global changes are now with us. We have to live with the consequences, as well as try to stop the warming getting worse. This means getting beyond the biophysical factors that often drive models of the future, like CO2 levels, extinctions, coral bleaching, etc., and looking also at the resilience of societies. Can we survive? Can we hope for the future? We need humanism as well as biophysical sciences. Limits to Growth does offer some hope in its less quoted final chapter, where it considers the possibilities of measuring and modelling the quality of life as an indicator of progress. Security, happiness and stability can grow for a long time without reaching limits, the 1972 book suggests. Perhaps the idea of equilibrium and stability have themselves dated in these 40 years. We now have chaos theory, and a philosophy of life that expects variability, shocks, and change rather than stability. Resilience demands a broader range of experts, not just biophysical scientists. It includes us all. Ordinary people need to be thoughtful citizens in coping with change, and we need clever measures to make our future about quality of life rather than economic growth. Munich's own Ulrich Beck has urged us to have more thinking about what he calls a global domestic economy, a way of doing things at the level of the human community that is also good for the planet as a whole. We need limits to growth and other wide-ranging narratives to help us imagine ourselves as actors in that global domestic economy. And we're looking forward tonight to Dennis Meadows' reflections on the trajectory of the thesis of limits to growth since 1972. Thank you.
Tonight, I'm going to present a number of ideas. In 1972, when we developed and published our first book, as far as we could tell, for the global society, there were still two possible future paths, which we might loosely call overshoot and sustainable development. And at that time, it was possible to imagine following either path. But to follow sustainable development path would require some major changes. We didn't make those changes. So we followed the overshoot path. That's the one we're on now. And one consequence of that is that the term, the goal, sustainable development, isn't very useful anymore. And much of my talk tonight will be an attempt to rethink the concept of sustainable development and redefine it so that it can be something that's useful for us in this century. And in order to start moving in that direction, I think we need to make 4 changes, which I will elaborate on over the course of the next half hour. First, we need to focus on universal, not on global problems. I will define all these terms. And incidentally, the Carson Center has these slides, so if you shouldn't spend any time writing them down. If you decide afterwards that they actually were interesting, then you can just get them from Christoph. We have to focus on social and cultural changes instead of assuming that economic growth and technological advance is going to solve all our problems for us. We need, as Libby said, to start shifting over from a preoccupation with sustainability to a concern for resilience. And then finally, as I hope I'll demonstrate, we need to shift from just talking about these things to start taking action. Before I get into my major remarks, I want to ask you to do a little exercise with me, because over the next half hour, I'm going to be presenting some new ideas for you. And in order to maximize the possibility that you are receptive, I'm going to give you some practice accepting new ideas. You see, as far as I can tell, we are today the product of many habits about economic growth, governance, our habits vis-a-vis the environment, our habits vis-a-vis energy use, and so forth. Those habits were very successful in the past, but now we need to change them. So please follow along. Actually, I'll stay here because of the video. So I ask everyone in this room, please cross your arms. Great. Now, look down and see which wrist is on the top. And just remember that, okay? I give you a hint. It's either the left or the right. Drop your arms. Perfect. Now, cross your arms. And look down and see which wrist is on top. Okay, so I'm a scientist. Now I'm going to conduct a scientific survey. Every one of you who had the same wrist up both times, raise your hand. Oh, me too. Almost everybody. It means, I guess, there must be some optimum technique for crossing your arms. Let's see what it is. Everyone who had the left wrist up both times, raise your hand. So I did. Everyone who had the right wrist up both times, raise your hand. So it's about 50-50. But we expect that. Everybody finds a habit, and it works, and then you quit thinking about it. You know, this is a habit. When you need to do something that doesn't require your arms, you need to put your arms someplace. Get them out of the way. And it would be silly if every time you had something that didn't require your arms, you had to spend 10 minutes, thinking, what am I doing? So you don't. You get a habit, and it works. That's like our habits related to economic growth and so forth. But sometimes the conditions change and you need a new habit. So I'm going to give you practice. Cross your arms the other way. So this very simple experiment shows three things which I hope you will remember while you're watching this speech tonight. Doing something new requires thinking and experimentation and the ability to make mistakes and keep trying. That's the first thing. The second thing, it's not very comfortable at first. Doing something in a different way is not very comfortable. I'm going to tell you some new things about the concept of sustainable development, and probably some of you won't find these new things very comfortable at first. But just remember this exercise. And then the third thing, very important, it was possible. Most of you were able, actually, to do it in a different way. And I hope at the end of the evening, most of you will be able to think about sustainable development in a different way. In 1972, in our first book, we published actually 13 different pictures of the future because we knew it's not possible to predict exactly what's going to happen. Of course, for each of those pictures, up until 1972 was the same because that was history. But from 1972 out until 2100, each of the 13 pictures was different depending on what assumptions you make about technological advance, about political responses, about the ethics of sharing, about just psychological attributes related to desired family size, and so forth. Roughly half of the pictures looked like the overshoot, and roughly half looked like sustainable development. And one of the main roles of the book was to describe the kinds of policies that would have to be undertaken in order to achieve something like sustainable development. Sustainable development doesn't solve all problems of humanity forever in the future, but it slows things down and gives us time to think about longer-term problems. But unfortunately, we didn't slow down. Here's, for example, global population. The red line is 1972. That's where we published our book and said it's important for global population to slow down. You could see we had enormous influence on population. And not only population, also in the economic sphere. For example, here's statistical data on the use of metals globally. Once again, 1972, we said slow down, and basically nothing happened. They just kept going. And the consequence of that is that we're still on the overshoot and collapse path. In 1972, this was all very theoretical. I mean, in those days, nobody imagined things